Welcome to the Wimlake Show. Today our guest is Robert from Murdoch's Ranch and Home Supply. It's an interesting guest for us because he's one of our first US customers with Murdoch's. So we are expanding in the US heavily thanks to our financing round we just disclosed in December 2020. And today we're going to speak about the business of Murdoch's Ranch and Home Supply, about the challenges of former brick-and-mortar retailers, about the chances due to COVID, and how Robert sees those chances. And maybe he has some very interesting war stories from his time at Microsoft. So welcome, Robert. Please tell the audience, who are you and what actually is Murdoch's Ranch and Home?
Well, thanks, Alex, for the intro. It's great to be here. Great to be a guest on your podcast. Starting with me, I've been in technology for 25 years or so, doing a variety of roles across industries, typically more IT or enterprise roles, enabling technologies to allow business teams to do things they couldn't do without the technology. And at Murdoch's, I'm the CIO, so I'm in charge of all technology initiatives, both on our retail floor all the way out to our digital channel, which Spryker is going to help us reach a lot of new customers.
Can you give us some background about Murdoch? So what is Murdoch selling? Where is it selling? How is it selling? Do they produce stuff their own, or are they just like a retailer selling stuff from other brands?
We're in a really interesting niche here. So we're headquartered. I'm looking out my window here at the Bridger Mountains, part of the Rockies in Montana, Bozeman, Montana. We have 34 stores located in Montana, Wyoming, Colorado, one in Salmon, Idaho, and one in Scottsbluff, Nebraska. So really the Rocky Mountain, kind of northern Rockies. And our market started off really as a ranch supply. You know, you can think of, you probably watched Kevin Costner and Yellowstone and big ranches, and they need things like fencing and they need tools and clothing and ranch wear. So we serve that market. I think that's our core market. But as more and more people have moved into the Mountain West, they need a lot of other things too. And so we essentially provide everything for that Western lifestyle. Then when you come to, Montana or Colorado, you can get Carhartt, which is a great brand of ours. We sell a lot of Carhartt. DeWalt, we're a premier DeWalt dealer. We sell high-end steel chainsaws, Husqvarna, power tools, fencing. We sell veterinary supplies like vaccines for animals. We sell tack, for horses. So very kind of unique niche for us. A lot of the product that we sell cannot be shipped really in an economic way. So we sell like pre-fert fencing, which is the steel fencing panels. And those, are very heavy and large and don't really fit in a box.
I have some of those. It's called it's called Texas fence here. If you go to Farm Supply here in Germany, it's called a Texas fence.
Absolutely. So I think our business has been booming. One of the things that's happened that's kind of interesting is with COVID, it's kind of accelerated these population shifts. And so there's a lot of people that are moving here from other parts of the country, kind of seeking, I think, wide open space, nature, and that. And, we're right on the doorstep of Yellowstone National Park, just 60 miles away here, and we're very close to Glacier National Park. There's still bison roaming around and grizzly bears and all that. And so I think people seek a connection to especially with COVID and being kind of constrained, now they're seeking wide open spaces.
But just like from my understanding, so Murdoch then is like just a middleman retailer. So they're not producing this Texas fences, or they're not producing the Carhartt, for example.
Right.
They are just storing it in the store and then selling it to the end consumer. And you're representing actually like the new channels in Murdoch's too. So selling via a website or via an app. So can you tell me, so when did it started, like, to think about those new channels? Because with this history, with this very brick and mortar heavy business model, I think that's rather like a newer development, or was it around already 15 years ago?
Well, like anything, Murdoch's tried to build a web channel back in 2013, I believe, is when they launched their first foray into this. And it was like anything else, it was like hang a shingle out and maybe people will come, right? It was like more of, that's where everything's headed. Everyone's going onto the web, so we have to do that too. And it kind of really struggled. They built out a fulfillment capability, a centralized fulfillment capability. They invested a lot in their site. They put a lot of processes in place that didn't exist, but then the customers never really came. I think that for several reasons. But when I got here, they were really struggling with what's the purpose really of, if like you said, we have all these brick and mortar locations, and that's that's where all your capital is, right? If you build these stores and you staff them, that's where a lot of your investment is going. What's the website? What's the purpose of the website to support your business? And I came in and said, hey, really, the website has got to be about three things. One, it is a marketing vehicle that should tell your story, right? Like you said, if we're a middleman, there's a lot of middlemen. So why would people come to us as a middleman? So there's a marketing element of what your website does. Secondly, there's a store, of course, like you want people to come and be able to find things and buy things. But then there's the third thing. And it's largely why, we wanted to go headless from a commerce perspective. And it is an enabler for you to be able to do certain capabilities that you couldn't do without the technology. So, and a great example of that is, when COVID came, and I don't think anyone was really expecting that on the horizon, we needed to quickly be able to offer our customers a way to come shop with us and pick up. So that was this buy online, pick up in the store aspect, be able to pre-stage the product, come pick it up. Well, without the web technology, there's no way you could enable that, right? So we were lucky in the farm and ranch side of it. There were a lot of our competitors that really didn't invest in that area because they said, well, most of our customers really come in and value that relationship, that face-to-face relationship. We don't really see the benefit or the value in investing in the technology. But I think, as retail evolves and continues to evolve, my job as a technologist here is to position the company to be able to evolve as customers' tastes and preferences and how they want to shop change. Mm-hmm. So it's really like those three things. One, yes, the website has to be a marketing vehicle, tell your story. Two, people have to be able to shop. That's just table stakes. And the third is it's a platform to enable you to innovate, do things, and serve customers in new ways.
Hmm. Do you see similarities to your experience with Microsoft? So you've worked almost 20 years, I think, at Microsoft, and you have been general manager of retail and e-commerce channels. And I think for those channels, started also for Microsoft, in the 2010s, more or less. Yeah. So was it kind of the same barriers you had to jump over in order to get the Microsoft team on board with the idea of reaching out to customers on new channels? So Is there something from the Microsoft experience which you can transfer to the Murdoch's experience and some learnings here you can share?
Yeah, absolutely. So Microsoft, when I started at Microsoft back in 1998, long time ago, the company was really divided into a bunch of separate, almost like companies within the company. And I started in a piece of Microsoft called the Home and Entertainment Division. And it was really about the only part of the company that was serving end consumers, we call them customers, like retail customers. Because you think the rest of Microsoft was really about enterprises, right? The licensing and how do I, offer Office to the company of BMW. And, that was where most of the resources were in Microsoft, was around enterprise. And there was this tiny little group that started actually out of when Microsoft launched Windows, early versions of Windows. They needed a pointing device called a mouse. And so they needed to build a mouse because there wasn't any. This was prior to, that everything was very keyboard centric. So there was no mouse. And so Microsoft stepped up to do that and then started building their consumer portfolio around that. So with keyboards, mice, and then they added video games and other things. And then they really used distributors, middlemen to sell to the end customer. They weren't involved in retail at all. So the evolution then was we launched Xbox, and Xbox was very much a consumer centric product, but it required a retail relationship too, because retailers didn't want to go through a middleman. They wanted to work directly with the brand owner, the company that was building this, primarily because there's not a lot of margin in that. And Xbox was really a razor and razor blades business, meaning you sell the console, but you really want to attach the games to it. And that's how the retailer makes money, by doing that. And so, I remember in Europe, MediaMarkt and a bunch of other companies. I don't know if MediaMarkt's even around anymore, but trying to figure
it is. But the question is smart. So it's heavily discussed. So what's going to be the future for MediaMarkt? But it's still the biggest consumer electronics retailer in Europe.
Good. So I remember working with, trying to figure out how to get product on the shelf, and Microsoft was trying to learn about what was important to retailers, and this whole idea of earn and turn, and which was margin and how many times the inventory turned over, as their asset was an important thing to learn. And we of course had to build new capabilities to do that, build like EDI with the retailer and build vendor managed inventory solutions and all this to manage the shelf. And of course, what kept happening was, devices, more and more things started going digital. And also you had the rise of Apple, with their iPads and their Macs. And Microsoft said, we can't continue to rely on middlemen anymore. We have to be able to build a direct channel to the end customer. So that was when we, in 2010 and 11, started to build a direct retail channel. And that was very controversial because that was seen as channel conflict, right? So if you are the owner of the brand and you're selling directly to the customer, those are the same customers that are buying from folks like MediaMarkt or Best Buy or Saturn or, these companies. Auchan, like all those retailers there. So you really had to then, come up with a strategy of what are you going to do to differentiate? Like if we're just selling the product, from Microsoft to the end customer, you can't compete on price on that, because as soon as you compete on price, then you cut off all that retail channel, and you really need that retail channel to reach customers. And I think ultimately, that's what retail boils down to, is relationships. And customers go to a middleman because they trust them. And with Microsoft, what we did in that retail channel is we said, one of the complaints that customers had with Windows, and I would hear it in the airport, people go, they'd hold up like a 2002 Windows XP IBM, ThinkPad and say, and then they would compare it to their, brand new MacBook Pro. And they said, why is this such a piece of crap? Look, my MacBook just works, right? And it's apples and oranges they were comparing. Like, one is this 10-year-old operating system full of crap. The hardware isn't optimized, and they're comparing it to a MacBook. So Microsoft said, that's what we have to own. We have to own that experience all the way from the customer back. And so we started offering, working with the OEMs like Dell and HP, and Lenovo. And we said, this is the specs that we want in the machine. Because before, in and around that time frame, before we were building that channel, it was really a race to the bottom. Everyone was at the $500, 500 euro kind of price point on the computer. And you just can't have a good piece of hardware at that price. And people said, no one will pay for a premium Windows product. And so that was where we came in. We said, okay, well, the retailer didn't want to stock those. They wanted the $500 one. And they wanted the machine that had all the, what we called bloatware. If you remember,
yes,
the OEMs would go work with AOL and stuff like that.
It took usually like 10 years ago, buying a Windows PC, it took like always half a day to install like a naked Windows. Yes,
exactly. So then from our own channel, we said, well, that's something we can offer then. We'll offer a highly optimized, we called it signature image on our machines. If you buy it from us, you'll get this optimized signature Windows image. You'll get hardware that we stand behind. We selected, we curated it. We said, these are the machines we recommend to run Windows. And we offered a way for customers to come to us to get those. And then we built a kind of a premium support channel, kind of like Apple Care, called Microsoft Complete, that supported that. But that was in response a little bit to where customers were going, which is, hey, why do I have to go to, this middleman? Because the product really was the experience, was the hardware plus the software experience. And so, secondarily, what was happening too is there were no disk drives on the computers anymore, right? As you got those slim laptops, everything was digital. So once everything's digital, you need a channel to reach those customers directly, right? How is a retailer going to sell a digital product on your behalf? And the other interesting thing is because the DNA of Microsoft was always to, and it still is today, to leverage partner ecosystems to sell their products. They still wanted retailers to be able to sell digital product. And that was another area that my team came in to say, how do we provide digital, like Office? How do we allow MediaMart to sell a digital version of Office from their website, but yet fulfill that from Microsoft?
That I think was not a very user-centric thinking. It was kind of a channel-first thinking. How can we protect our wholesale channel? But is there a learning in there which you can translate today in the Murdoch case? Because you're now on the other side, right? So Carhartt could ask themselves, okay, why should I ship merchandise to Murdoch? So they're just shipping it to the customer in a box when the customer is buying via the website. So is this kind of experience from Microsoft helping there, shaping a good relationship with Carhartt?
Yeah. So, the main kind of aha or learning is it's that relationship. It's the trust that you build over time. So if you have a customer that comes in and it's just they're seen as a transaction, right? Then from an you'd build a different experience. But if it's about building trust over time, and as a customer continues to come in because you steer them the right direction. So Carhartt has lots of products, and we don't stock them all. We pick ones that work for the climate here, and have worked with a lot of the people that work in our stores have been, ranchers and cowboys and loggers and everything. And so they have personal experience and can stand behind the product. And we tend to bring in brands that, are aligned with those experiences that we have. And so, we also, the other key, learning. So there's the trust piece. You're building a relationship over time. And you treat that customer as they have a lifetime value. Hmm. That's one thing. Secondly, I think is, you listen to the customer, the consumer, and you say, what do they want and how are they're changing. You mentioned something about, we had a channel first approach, at Microsoft. And we did, but we actually called it channel inclusion, not that we would do everything just through the channel. We would say, hey, we want to allow customers to get our product wherever, they have their wallet, basically. So if they're in Media Mart and they want to buy Office because they're buying a machine, we want the ability to, we called it, do you want fries with your burger? So Office with your PC, because at that point of purchase was the perfect time to bring those two together, right? To attach those. In our retail store and our online, this is something, it's called related selling, right? Where we want to ultimately get to the point of, if you're buying a chainsaw, it's the perfect opportunity to upsell you different types of saw blades and different types of components that'll go with the chainsaw at that point of purchase, or potentially other add-ons, right? Maybe some protective gloves or eyewear like that. Ultimately, you're building, one of the retailers I like here in the US is backcountry.com, and they sell outdoor products, skiing, climbing, paddling, human powered kind of sports. And they have these gearheads, which are experts that will curate, they'll talk to you via chat, and you develop a relationship and you kind of pick what you're interested in. I'm into mountain biking, backcountry skiing, maybe rock climbing. And, they're experts that also are good, that do those sports, and they connect with you, and then they kind of curate products around what you need. And so I bought a backcountry, snowboard, a split board, which actually breaks apart and you can ski up it, the hill, and then you put it back together and come down. And there's lots of other
thing. Never heard about that.
Yeah. So basically, out here, a lot of people go outside of the ski resort. And so when you go outside of the ski resort, you need a way to get up the hill, right?
Yeah.
And so in skiing, they call that AT. But I'm a snowboarder, so they make snowboards that do the same thing, that split apart and turn into skis as you go uphill with skins on them. So you actually put these skins on them and they go uphill one way, but they won't come back down. But there's a lot of gear that you need for that. And if you're a novice and you're coming in, you'll say, hey, just set me up. What do you use? Cause you trust them because you see what their profile and everything they've done. So I think with Murdoch's and, at Microsoft, what we learned too is there's a trust in that expertise. And at that point of purchase, people will, customers will put faith in you. The people give you the benefit of the doubt that first time. So if you steer them right the first time and you take care of them and you provide a great experience, they tell other people, of course, but then they come back. And as long as you continue to provide that level of support and service, you kind of win the customer, and they'll give you it's not that price isn't important. Of course, it's a factor, but ultimately there are other factors in there as well. And one of the things that I learned from the Microsoft experience is you got to take care of the customer both in that time of need, but also when things don't go right. That's important. And then you're looking at them as a lifetime customer, not as a single point in time.
Okay, got it. And has COVID changed something? So I guess the whole e-commerce approach, headless approach, kind of accelerated within Murdoch's, but now even very new customers that never maybe entered a store need to be acquired online. So you need to maybe add new skills to your team. Could be online marketing, could be LinkedIn marketing, whatever. So what has changed due to COVID for your business?
Well, I mean, I think the main thing is that more and more people are coming into the website first as their first point of contact to see a couple things. I think one is, do we have the product that they want? People don't really want to go hang out in a store if they don't have to. And then more and more, like when we, at the start of COVID, we were piloting in just 3 stores this curbside pickup. And once COVID hit, we rapidly rolled it out. I think we took like 4 weeks to roll it out to all the stores. And a lot of customers, I think we were about 50-50 in terms of 50% were shopping, doing the ship to their house, and 50 were coming in for pickup. And a lot of the products we sell, like we were selling 100-pound bags of feed, things like that, weren't shippable. Medicine that needs to be in a cooler was not shippable. So there are a lot of people kind of doing their shopping that way. And what we found is, net, the pie grew for us. Like the more options we gave people. So it wasn't like we were forcing people one way or the other. Like if you want to come into the store, yeah, we still have that experience, and we make our store safe, and we, have, hours for vulnerable people that can come in, and we have, our COVID-19 guidelines on there, and we try to make people feel comfortable about that. But we also want to offer the ability for you to ship to your house. So, we started doing pet food, like bigger bags, like 50-pound bags of like dog food. That's another key category for us is pets. In the US anyway, we compete head to head with Chewy, which is kind of a juggernaut in that space. The other area is that people were combining a lot of things in a basket, and they wanted to save time. They wanted to shorten the contact period, and so they would put those in. And so I think what we saw was we accelerated this, what we're kind of trying to term here. Like I was trying to even, that omni-channel term is so overused in a way. Like there's all these different channels that customers, but
it's true. And it's not a customer oriented view. It's usually still like a company focused view. So how can we sell at all channels? But it's not like focusing on the customer. That's why this kind of term is kind of old, I would say.
Exactly. And so what we came up with, and this was kind of from my Microsoft days a little bit, I remember when we were building the Xbox marketplace, there was at the time, and I said Microsoft was really comprised of all these silos, all these independent little groups. And they all had different, like the office was a separate team, right? And if you remember back in early Microsoft days, there were multiple identity frameworks. There was this thing called Passport, and then there was a Microsoft account, and then there was an Xbox, you had an Xbox gamer tag login. So they were all separate identity platforms. And what we said is we're really showing the seams of our organization to our customer, right? Because each of those independent little companies within the company had their own technology. And then what we did was we exposed that to our customer, and we said, what we really need to build is a seamless commerce. So if the customer comes in, they don't know, it doesn't really matter to them, where they're at or where they're coming from. And so that was the term I'm kind of using here at Murdoch's, is we need to build a seamless experience for our customer. So if they start their transaction online and they can finish it in the store, we could do that. Or if they want to, come in and, buy something at the curb, we can do that. If they buy it online and want to return it to one of our 34 stores, we can do that in a seamless way to them. And then we need to connect, I think the differentiator for Murdoch's is we do have those 34 stores in our regions, and they are knowledge centers for us. They're trust centers. Like people come into the store to talk about, like a lot of people moving here are, starting little farms, and they have never done that before. So they want to talk to someone that has. And so that's a differentiator for us. Like they can't call Amazon and say, hey, I'm moving to Montana and we need to know, like, what kind of Carhartt do I need? How cold does it get? When can I, start planting things? That kind of knowledge is important in the overall kind of purchase decision. So how do I take the web, or whatever experience it could be in the future? Your speakerphone, your car could be connected to the internet. That's the headless concept. You could be talking to some small screen or a big screen. But how do I tear down the barrier between this internet type experience and what you do in the store? And how do I bring that store back in to the online experience? And so an example of how we use that principle to put it into motion was we had originally, when I started and took over kind of this e-commerce effort, there was a small team of customer service people, and their job was to support just the ordering process and questions and refunds of the online experience. And these people had no really product knowledge or anything. They were just help desk people basically for the website. And if you have a question, you can call them. And I said, and we had some turnover, and we really need to, as the volume increased. So we had between kind of that middle of March timeframe, and let's say 1st of May, our volumes online grew 500%. And so that team that we had of like a couple of dedicated people were no longer capable of the volume. And so the easy thing would have been, let's just replicate that model and just add more people into that kind of central siloed team, that company within a company. It's an organization within the broader organization. But what we said is, if we really want to do a seamless approach, what we have to do is let's actually hire people within the stores. So we already have associates, right, that know those products and have that knowledge in our store. Let's actually have them be part of that team. And so what we did was we enabled the capability we put laptops out in those stores. And so for a certain percentage of the time, those sales associates actually provide frontline customer service for web customers. And so and when I got here, it was really this concept of Store 99, which was a whole separate e-commerce store that was kind of doing business and process completely separate from what was happening in the brick and mortar store. And I said, let's break those down. Like, to break the seams for our customer, we then have to change the culture, right? So that people view a Murdochs.com customer as a Murdochs customer, not as a separate entity, but someone that could also be face to face with you and your store. And getting these people in our regional stores to take customer service calls from online customers was one of the places in which we started breaking down those seams.
And this project, which I think you've most likely shared some vision with your with brands you're working with, like Carhartt and the others. So does it attract new merchants, new vendors, new brands? Does it like create some momentum? So I will give you one example, because a lot of merchants, a lot of vendors learned during COVID that on Amazon, they can be like exchanged within like a single click. So when Amazon is deciding, okay, Carhartt trousers are not important for us anymore because we need to deliver, I don't know, toilet paper, which was the thing here in Germany, for example. So we just delist or derank Carhartt browsers. So the whole sales strategy of some of those brands was like, okay, let's Amazon first, and then let's see what's happened next. And this might have changed. I sense at least it might have changed, but you're directly talking with those brands. So has this changed something? So are you now becoming like more important for them, even for online retail? Because before COVID, before like your e-commerce activities, Murdochs was just a wholesale company for them. It was not even like in the bucket online retailers, right? It was just online retailers was, as you said, maybe Chewy, maybe it was Amazon, maybe it was something different. So is it changing now? Do they seek now more strategic alliances?
Well, it depends on the vendor and what their Carhartt is one that does look for partners that align with kind of their vision, and we work with them very closely. Another one's Yeti, which I don't know if they have that in Europe, but they make high-end coolers, and they're a couple $100. They're not the cheap coolers, and so the vendors are trying to align with retailers that can share their story, I think, because it's a crowded space, and each vendor has a story that they want to tell too, in terms of what differentiates them in a red sea of, there's a lot of cooler companies, that make insulated coolers, and there's a lot of companies that make clothing, like Carhartt work clothing. So in some ways we're selective in the vendors that we work with, and they can be selective with us. But again, it's about this relationship over the long haul. So I'd say COVID hasn't necessarily changed any of those relationship dynamics. The vendors like Carhartt really, they don't have their own showrooms really, so they really value our ability to show the entire breadth of what they offer. And then obviously where the e-commerce stuff comes in is a lot of the vendors have unique pricing policies, because they don't really want to be commoditized from a price perspective. And so they have MAP pricing, which is minimum advertised pricing, that we have to be able to uphold. But then there's lots of promotions that we run, but we can't show the lower price in terms of, how the bots and so forth come and scrape all that price, and then Amazon just matches the price that we have. And then the other element of it is kind of after sales service. Once you sell the product, and this is true with brands like Husqvarna, they want us to be able to service those products directly. And so we do have a repair facility. So we try to sell things that we can then service, and the customer trusts us over time that we can service and the products that we sell. And so the vendors,
you're not only selling then chainsaws but also like from Husqvarna, this gardening tractors, or like the bigger stuff too. Oh, okay. That's awesome.
Yeah. We tend to
I would like Murdoch here in my town too. Yes.
Yeah. Part of our mission, actually, we talk about it is, we want to earn the admiration, respect, and smiles of our customers, team, and supplier partners as the leader in our industry. That's our mission statement. And the supplier piece is we want to create an ongoing relationship. So we don't view the supplier as this antagonistic relationship of we want to try to drive you down on price, like a Walmart, like in the United States, is notorious for pushing their supplier to come up with lower prices. And that's kind of their strategy. What we want to do is we want to partner with the supplier, and collectively work together to be able to provide the experiences to customers, that they envision and then we envision. And sometimes the relationships don't work. Our philosophies aren't the same. But then other ones, we end up building that trust, for a lot of years. Carhartt is one of those brands that has been around with us for a long time. Wrangler, which is another one, is a good brand of ours, clothing wise. And those power equipment brands, we've had 20-year relationships with.
Cool. So maybe because we have only a couple of minutes left, maybe some questions about the project itself, because you've chosen now like a headless first technology, like a very modern approach, and in order to build, like, to say it with the old word, like an omni-channel seamless experience. usually this comes like with the task of building a tech team. And from what I understood, where you're located in Montana, it's not Silicon Valley by far. So how do you find tech people? Or now with Corona, you can hire them remote. So how does it work for your company?
Well, it kind of starts with I think you asked me this earlier. Is in a retailer, they're not a technology company. So first of all, you got to acknowledge reality. So I always say, see the world as it is, not as you want it to be. So the world as it is as a retailer, our core business is not a technology, we're not a software company. So, you have to get really focused, first of all, on where the technology is going to help your overall mission of the company. So, coming in, we had outsourced pretty much everything, for the online, Murdochs.com. And through that outsourcing, we lost a lot of control and a lot of agility and being able to move quickly and do things that we wanted to do. And it over time became more expensive, actually. And so, first of all, it's like building this, you have to build a compelling vision of why you need a technology team and what they're going to do. And so for me, working with the owners, it's, hey, we'll spend that money anyway, one way or the other. And wouldn't we rather have someone that's a Murdoch's employee, a Murdochian, as we call it, that really has the pride and is in the market and wants to build that brand? We're all, as humans, we want to build stuff, as engineers and as, humans forever have wanted to build things. So we need to tap into people that want to build the brand, want to build the experience for our customers. And when we do that, we'll be faster, we'll build a better product, and it'll probably have a lower total cost of ownership, right, over time. So then, you really have to then start to attract people. You've got to put that vision. What's the purpose? Like you always start with, why is it that we want to do this, and what role are you going to play on this? I think you can tap into this underdog. We as the small company in Montana are fighting these Goliaths like Amazon, like Chewy, and those corporate entities don't really contribute back to these local towns and these local economies, right? And I think that there's a feeling of connection that software folks and people want to be part of a community. That's why I moved from Microsoft to this small town here in Bozeman, as I wanted to be part of something. And I wanted to come to Murdoch's because I wanted to help them. I wanted to build something that I could look back on and say, at Microsoft, there's 120,000 employees, and I was in that company. I was actually employee 13,611, and we went all the way up to 100,000. But I was just still a small piece of it. I think here what you can say is you're going to be a big piece of building something that's going to touch our customers, your neighbors, your friends. When you go to the football game, you'll be able to say, yes, I work at Murdoch's and I built this experience that you use every day. So I think it starts with what's the purpose? Why is it that we want to do this? And then you tap into that human, the human, innate, desire to want to be part of something and to want to build something that they can look back on and be proud of. And I think where headless comes in is that nimbleness and agility for us to innovate and to build customer experiences faster than building everything. This is where Spryker came in for us. Is we want to pick partners, just like suppliers. When you talked about the suppliers like Carhartt and Husqvarna and all that, Spryker is a supplier as well, and we want them to go and be experts and build world-class technology that we can rely on, and they're going to pull us into the future, right? That's the goal. Is I want technology partners that pull us into the future. As a small retailer in Montana, I don't want to push my vendor. I want them to pull us. And then I want to build a small, nimble tech team that can quickly build and leverage those pieces and put them together in unique ways that serve our customers.
So you've said you have to acknowledge the reality. So like you're still a local retailer, more or less. So and we discussed it before this podcast. So selling the way you sell, and technology is usually the most important driver to decide on how you sell. That's going to be a major USP in the future. So the whole view on the IT as a cost center will have to change into a view where IT becomes a technical part of the of driving the business value. So how you sell, how you to connect with the customers. Your CRM needs to work better than the CRM of a competitor, or needs to be like more personalized than the one Amazon is providing. So what is your experience in convincing the senior management or the owners in your case? Do they understand it, or do they just trust you and say, okay, do whatever you want, just make it work?
Well, I always start with this really simple model. And it starts with when you come in into a technology landscape for a retailer, you run a lot of things. You make sure the cash registers run, and you make sure the networks are up, and you make sure that the ERP system runs and all that. And that's the cost center piece, right? Because what you want is that's a utility. And when you come in and flip a light switch on in your office when it's dark,
yes,
you don't praise the electrical company by saying, gosh, I really am so happy with the electrical company because the light came on. Yeah, right? What you do complain about is if the bill is really high, you go, why is the bill so high for this electricity? And you're mad about it. So I think as a tech, I think it's, you have to do both those things. You have to say, yes, we are a cost center, and our job is to continually aggressively manage our costs and show on a per unit basis, one, that we're driving uptime, we're reducing calls and incidents, and we're doing it at the right cost. So you have to do that. A CIO today has to do that. But then there's an innovation piece, which is let's go plan and build capabilities and technologies that drive back into our business to support, business initiatives that have an ROI. So technology is both about being the cost center and being a responsible manager of those costs over time, but also building new things. So I think it's this ambidextrous thing that you have to do. And I also think that IT these days also has to take the lead in planning as well for future capabilities, because no modern retail capability can be done without technology. So if you think about, for example, self checkout, so customers don't have to, they can go right out of the store with a self checkout situation. That's technology enabled, but it also has there's a business process behind all that too, in loss prevention and probably how we're going to organize where that self checkout thing is and staffing and so forth. The other thing for us, an example is we're tightly constrained on space in some of our markets. We have a store right nestled up into the Bitterroot Mountains in Hamilton, Montana. And it's a very small store, and they have a lot of feed bags in the store. And so what we want to do is we want to move those feed bags outside into a barn, but create a digital screen that allows customers to pick the feed that they want, so they can still kind of shop and see. But then when they do that, they're able to go and pick that up. So we can we're working with the constraints, the physical constraints, and then also wanting to offer a new shopping experience that has, the benefit of still driving the sale, but not taking up all that space, as an example. So that's planning for a new capability. But at the same time, what we're going to do, and this is where working with Spryker, is we need to do that as a cost-effective way too.
Yeah. And but can you But can you think about like a future where like the whole IT project becomes much more than like just like a seamless experience? So can you like become a local marketplace, for example? Because I guess there's not too many Murdoch like businesses that can invest in IT projects with software like Spryker. So you might provide like an infrastructure in the future for companies or services that cannot afford such technology, and therefore become like a local marketplace for ranchers or farmers. Is it? Could this be part of a vision, or is it like far away yet?
I don't know. I haven't thought about that. To me, that's like what these shopping platforms as a service are trying to do too. So I think it'll be interesting to see how things evolve. Amazon is putting their fingers in a lot of different pies. In the United States, we have these big kind of suburban shopping malls that are now empty as customers have changed how they shop. They don't really go to those shopping malls. Amazon is buying up space in those shopping malls. And the first thing they're putting in them is Whole Foods. So they bought the grocery company Whole Foods, but they're also buying a lot of the other spaces in the mall. And there's speculation that they're going to use those as last mile kind of distribution zones and potentially local marketplace hubs. But I think, like when you talk about, and I've been in these big companies, the challenge that an Amazon has, or a Microsoft or any like big company, Shopify, is as they get big, they get distracted. There's a lot of things that happen. And I think there's always room. I think there'll always be room for companies like Murdoch's, and other smaller focused companies to serve their customer.
I 100% agree. So the niche is huge. So I guess like farm supply. I think farm supply in the German market is like 30 billion. So that must be then in the US like 5 to 10 times this size. So we are talking about like 200 billion or something in this areas. And because so many customers are now used to order online, the former long tail online becomes now really fat. So this part in farm supply online is such a big niche. It could be a reason to build marketplace capabilities or other stuff. And you're one of the first companies in this area doing this. So that's why I'm so eager to learn about and of course, like supporting your vision with Spryker. But anyway, it's a super interesting case. Maybe as a just to give some details to the listeners. Some of them are also part of our partners agency. So it was like a fully remote sales process. So it was during Corona. We onboard you fully remote. We help you wherever help is needed. And I think that might be also the future here. So that's why I'm thinking. And so we didn't talk before the podcast. So if this is possible now in 2020, and if you can scale it in 2021, why can't you become like the major leading marketplace for this niche and area? Because there's so many special things in this farm equipment area that cannot be replicated by Amazon or by Chewy or others. Though the potential is enormous, actually.
Absolutely. And that's our goal. We start with our market, that we serve. And that's where the power of bringing that brick and mortar asset that we've built.
Yes.
How do we leverage that brick and mortar asset to better serve our customer, even if they come in from an online perspective? Because so many of our products just are not going to be that feasible to ship out. And that actually is where we have a little bit of advantage, because we have 1,600 employees in those 34 locations that all know the product line. They all know those customers face to face, and the customers trust them to serve them. So now it's how do we amplify that? How do we take advantage of that asset that we have and build on the power of and? Do we have a brick and mortar channel? Yes, and we have this online capability that we can enable. So how do we take those two together, right, and build on it? So we fulfill all of our product from those stores. So we don't have a centralized distribution center today. So all of our inventory and everything is offered through those 34 stores. Now we're going to look at offering some central distribution because we can see some good use cases for doing that, to expand lines and to take the fat tail, if you will, and be able to more efficiently just fulfill to customers. But really, we think that our unique differentiation is in leveraging those 34 stores in some way, married in a seamless way to that digital channel that we can build with Spryker.
Robert, thank you for your time. Thank you for your answered fantastic story. We should definitely update in half a year or so. Let's see what happens until then. And I hope our listeners enjoyed the question and answers. Thank you.
Thanks, Alex.